Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this Facebook Live transmission. And today we're going to be sharing quick information regarding Asia, but especially on Singapore. So today we have a very special guest with us that will be having this conversation from very far away. And thank you for being with us today. My name is Carlos Higuera, and I will let our guests to introduce themselves.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Benjamin Lai. I am from Singapore. I am the Regional Director from the Mexico City Office of Enterprise Singapore.
Thank you.
Hello. Hi, hello. My name is Alex Chua. I'm also from a very far away place called Singapore, but as you can see, my background is a very beautiful city. I am the CEO of Asia Alpha Futuro, a business platform based in Singapore to help companies explore opportunities in Asia.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Benjamin. And also we have another guest with us.
Muchas gracias, Carlos. Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Samuel Lugo, and I'm with JSL Consulting and the Asia Baja California Businessmen Association. Thank you for inviting us, Carlos.
Thank you, everyone. We are very happy to share this information, which is very important because we have in Singapore a great example of doing business within Asia and with the rest of the world. So the information that we will be seeing today is, I believe, very important, and definitely we are expecting to learn more from you. So Benjamin, Alex, thank you so much. And of course, Samuel, for helping us to do this setup for us. And Gabby, which is on the back over there, just listening to us. Thank you, Gabby, also for your support. So we have Benjamin from Mexico City, and we have Alex from Singapore, a beautiful city. So please join us and please share the information. We would like to hear from you.
Okay, so I'm Ben. I am from Singapore, but I'm currently based in Mexico City. Singapore is a very small country. We are an island. Only 725 square kilometers, making us one of the smallest countries in the world and the smallest in Asia. In comparison, Tijuana city alone is almost the size of Singapore. And my first contact with Mexico was 10 years ago in 2010 when I did my student exchange in Tech de Monterrey. And since then, I had a strong interest to work with Mexico. So after I graduated, I worked in China for 4 years with Singapore's beer, Tiger Beer, and then I joined Enterprise Singapore. Back then, we were known as International Enterprise Singapore, and I used to work with technology companies on their internationalization plans. So last year in June, I joined the awesome team in Mexico City office of Enterprise Singapore. And since then, as Enterprise Singapore, we have made 2 trips to Tijuana in December 2019 and in February this year. So it was during these trips where we met Samuel, and we are having this opportunity to meet all of you virtually today. So I can share a bit more about Enterprise Singapore. We are a government agency under the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Essentially, we are like very similar to old Mexico. Our office was opened in Mexico City in May 2000. So this month, we have just reached our 20th anniversary in Mexico. So we are very happy to be here. And our primary function is really to connect Singapore and Mexican companies for business opportunities. The sectors that we see more partnerships happening are oil and gas, manufacturing, infrastructure, trade, which includes agri-products. We buy a lot of agri-products from Mexico, and retail. So we sell a lot of retail products, consumer electronics, food products to Mexico. And last but not least, technology. As an organization, we are also in charge of growing the innovation and technology space in Singapore. We help Singapore diversify our food sources because we import almost 95% of our food. We also work to strengthen Singapore as a trading hub. And in special times such as this, we have assisted Singapore in sourcing for COVID-19 fighting equipment and consumables. And as the situation in Singapore has stabilized a lot, we are now helping Singapore companies export COVID-19 fighting equipment and consumables, and also COVID-19 fighting technology such as tracing and monitoring solutions. So I look forward to exploring few partnerships between Mexican and Singapore companies, not just for Mexico and Singapore, but for Latin America and Asia. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Benjamin, for sharing that important information with us. And doing some remarks of your comments, Singapore is a small country compared to Mexico, but you have definitely a very strong economy, and definitely you are an example to the world on doing business for once, and having a very good government on the second place. So the combination of these two things makes a great example of Singapore of doing business, and obviously to learning some of your experience. So I believe Alex has some information important to be shared with us. So I don't know, Alex, do you want to share that information? Are you ready now?
Oh, yes, please. Just allow me to share my screen.
Perfect. By the way, I love the screen that you have on your back. The background is great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, on the left is, on my left here, it's the Singapore Flyer, and the right side is the Marina Bay Sands. Iconic Marina Bay Sands is one of the two casinos in Singapore.
Wow.
You have to mention the Merlion.
Yes, the Merlion right now is on my slide. Can everyone see my screen here?
Yes, we can see it, and that's a great picture, by the way.
Yeah, this is a Singapore skyline, mainly because Singapore is a financial hub. So you can see a number of the international and local banks there. And Singapore is also known as the Lion City. You see the Merlion there is a very iconic statue in the it's located in the near the Singapore River. Okay, I just want to spend a couple of minutes to introduce myself. I work for a company called Asia Futuro. Asia Futuro is a business platform that helps entrepreneurs and business developers access services and partnerships to launch their products and services in the new Asia Pacific markets. So the platform has the three components where it allows you to learn, experience, and then take action. So you can learn through seminars and acquire information about the Asia markets, go on learning journeys to experience the cities, and then you can work with us to set up a rep office in Singapore. Okay. I was talking about learning journey, so this is another example of what we do here. We will be able to bring Tijuana businessmen to Singapore to meet with your embassy, speak with industry leaders, take a cultural tour, meet with potential business partners, and then learn more about how we can set up and access the vast Asian market using Singapore as a gateway. Okay, I wanted to start by explaining to the audience. I have been to Mexico 7 times. I love your national drink, tequila.
Thank you.
It drives the flu away and keeps me awake.
Definitely.
Friends who can drink tequila in the morning, afternoon, and evening is fantastic. So, but one of the very interesting myths that Mexicans seem to have about Asia is most of them seems to associate Asia with China. They think that China is Asia, and many of my friends in Mexico seems to think that Asia mainly is about China. While China is a very, very big country and very important economy in Asia, Asia is definitely not China. If you can see on the data on the left of the screen, actually Asia has 3 distinctive types of people. You have the Oriental people in China, Japan, Korea, and Vietnamese people who look like me and Benjamin. We are the Orientals. It's about 38% of Asians are Orientals. 31% of the entire Asian population, of course, are in China. They are all Orientals. And then you have about 29% South Asia, in the India subcontinent. These are the countries like India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan. And then you have, Asia has a lot of islands, Taiwan, the Philippines, Asia. Actually, these are the people, we call them Austronesians. They are the islanders, right? They are, and they live mainly in the islands off to the east of Asia. So in Asia, we have actually geographically more than 50 countries, right? All the way from the Middle East. Actually, Middle East is West Asia to Central Asia in the north, the former Soviet republics, the countries like Kazakhstan, these are in the north. Then you have China, Northeast Asia is Japan, Korea, and then in middle of Asia, you have Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan as part of the Greater China region, and then the very prosperous Southeast Asian region, which is where Singapore is based, and surrounded by countries such as Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, and then to the south, you will have Australia and New Zealand. I'm very, why is Singapore a gateway to Asia? And from a businessman's perspective, Singapore is in the middle of the 5 major economies of Asia. To the north, you have China and Japan. To the south, you have Indonesia and Australia. And then to our west, you have India. These are the 5 major engines of Asia. And definitely Indonesia, China, and India will be one of the largest economies in the world over the next 20 years. So if you are serious about doing business in Asia, you have to make sure that you are in the heart of the action, and the heart of the action is where I live, Singapore, so you can access all these major economies within a 4 to 6 hour flight. Now, the other myth that I seem to encounter when I meet with Mexican businessmen is they think that Asia is big. There's this story going around that if a Mexican company can make $1 from every person in China, they'll be a billionaire. Actually, that is technically true, but it's actually quite impossible. Okay? Because China, like all countries in Asia, their markets actually are restricted. As a businessman, you cannot have. My experience is you cannot have total access to the marketplace. Right? Many countries have regulations. They have prices. They have sectors that are price competitive and usually dominated by local players. So in many countries, take China as an example, the market in China, 80% of it may not be available to foreign companies in some sectors, up to 80%. So I used to work for a software company and a education technology company, and my experience there is 80% of the education technology procurement in those countries, right? In China, for example, they buy it from their local manufacturers directly, and you will not be able to compete in price, nor you'll be able to win projects in those sectors because they favor their own national enterprises. But having said that, 20% is still a very, very large sector. However, you have to consider that if you were to enter a place like China, for example, and most Mexican companies will think, oh, let's go to Shanghai and set up an office there. Let's enter China via Shanghai. Shanghai is about 24 million people population there. Singapore is about 5.8 million. If 20% of Shanghai is open to Mexican businessmen, it's only about 5 million, where the market is accessible or addressable to Mexican businesses. That market is a fraction of the population of Mexico City and just the size of Singapore. Okay, so when you want to explore opportunities in Asia, you have to look at what we call the addressable market, not how big the market is. The addressable market is the market that you can access with your products and services. Now, why is that? Why are there two other points that I want to make regarding competition and about the consumer being extremely price sensitive? Think about it. 60% of the world's population resides in 30% of the land area of the world. So you have a large number of people in less than 1/3 of the land mass of the world. So everybody is a very crowded place. So it's a very large population, group of people fighting for resources, fighting for markets, fighting for business, fighting for certain parts of the economy. And you will see ultra competitive competition in many Asian countries. That's why the manufacturing boom came out of China, of Japan, Korea, based on the ultra competitiveness and why the world buys a lot of product from Asia. My next slide, I want to talk about a little bit about the key challenges of doing business in Asia. Actually, culture matters in Asia. Business culture is very different within Asia. So if you operate from an office in Singapore, Shanghai, or Hong Kong, business culture differences are very apparent across, and you need to understand different business cultures, not just thinking that Asia is one homogeneous region, or as long as you understand how Chinese people work and do business there. Actually, business culture is very different. Let me give you an example using communication practices. So many of the businessmen in Asia, actually, they don't read emails. And many countries, they operate by phone, by face-to-face meetings. And a lot of business are done that way because in a lot of the emerging parts of Asia, power and internet infrastructure actually is a problem. Right? If you were to have a distributor or a partner in Asia, then there's also a issue between your Asian office, the culture of the Asian office versus your Mexican office. So social creatures. I found Mexican very optimistic people, and it may be different from what the Asians are used to in their own continent, right? And unfortunately, the Asian people see Mexicans from what I call the Hollywood lens. They watch too many Hollywood movies, so their judgment and their view of Mexico is a bit clouded by the Americans and Hollywood. But they once they go to Mexico, they will be able to see the vast opportunities there. But they first have to understand, of course, the Mexican culture. Mexican people will, for example, they will say things like everything is perfect, or they are going to follow up on something. It means different things in Mexico versus what it means in Asia. Mm-hmm. The next consideration of or challenge in doing business in Asia is what I call the product considerations. Do you sell a Mexican brand in Asia, or do you create a local brand? You sell your same product there, but you create a local brand in Asia. Because if you introduce a Mexican brand in Asia, you need to spend a lot more marketing and getting customers to understand your brand in Asia. So again, if you have a foreign brand tend to have a higher premium in terms of pricing. So you need to decide based on your product and services whether you want to introduce a foreign brand or you want to introduce a local brand for your product there. And then earlier I talked about market access. So a lot of the countries control access to the market through certification. So in order to do the correct certification, enter the market, you also need to have understanding of how to get your goods across borders, imported into the countries, certified to be accessible to consumers and businesses in different sectors. So you need to have also a very strong certification team, especially if you want to enter the markets in the north, like Korea, Japan, China. With culture, product, and market issues, your sales and marketing strategy of entering the Asia market needs to take into account all those factors. And then you have new questions and issues you need to think about. Most of the buying power are in the cities, but but the local regions have very, very big population as well. So almost half of population of Asia are in the cities, and half of population are in suburban or rural communities. So do you, when you do your sales and marketing strategy, do you want to first enter via doing business in the city first and then expanding to the region, or you want to straight away go in and then access a volume market in a region? If you go in the city, then you need to think about whether you want to do focused distribution or you want to do broad distribution. You want to sell across the 2,000 districts in China, 10 countries in Southeast Asia, or you want to target in capital cities across the Asia region where the spending power is. And then those decisions that you make will affect whether you have a direct or indirect sales and marketing organization. So, some tips for you guys. I call it crawl, walk, run. Right? Asia is a vast continent, heterogeneous, all very different countries. Every country has their own currency, their own tax system, and there are many different languages there. Unlike the US, where if you do business in the West Coast or East Coast, it's the US dollar. You just need to speak English and Spanish. You're done, right? In Asia, it's a bit different. You need to speak English. You will speak English, maybe Mandarin as well, and then maybe also a local dialect or understand a local dialect or local language to do business in the Asia region. Now, crawl, walk, run. So, I would say tip number one. Use Singapore as a beachhead. Like when you fight a war, you need to tack somewhere. You need to enter the market. You need to enter somewhere first, right? Pick Singapore, right? 70% of the regional headquarters in Asia are based in Singapore. So these are the companies from the Americas, from Europe, from South Korea or China. They put their headquarters in Singapore to access the regional markets. Singapore is multicultural and is multi-ethnic labor force. So for you guys who have been to Singapore, you will see that we have many ethnicities. You can hire a Chinese person, Chinese Singaporean, to do business with China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Macau. You can hire a Malay Singaporean who speaks Bahasa, the language of Indonesia and Malaysia. And then you can hire an Indian Singaporean to do business with India, Sri Lanka, and the Indian subcontinent. So setting up an office in Singapore allows you to access a highly educated workforce and hire the people with the correct background to access all the countries and the markets in Asia. But Singapore is a multicultural country with strong rule of law, and we are renowned in the world for what I call the 3H: high touch, high trust, and high technology. So a lot of tech companies who come to Singapore to test their products, intellectual property is very, very well protected there. There's high trust in the Singapore system, in the brand. Our standards are there. And then high touch because we have access to we have many trade agreements and we have access to a huge network of business communities across the Asia region, being one of the financial centers and trade hubs in Asia. Tip number 2, you are who you hire. I mean, it applies to all businesses. In Asia, your first hire really matters. Start with a local. You want to hire a second one, you can bring a Mexican. But start with a local first, because the Mexican guy goes there, he doesn't have the network, any business network, right? He'll be there as a tourist because he doesn't know the supply chain, the vendors. He might have some distributors or partners that he had met or spoke over the internet on WeChat or WhatsApp, but he doesn't really have that network of suppliers or the ecosystem to support him. Start with a local person who has done regional business, understands how to point your business in the right direction, meaning if there are 20 countries you are trying to expand to, which one do you start first? The local person who have experience doing that will be able to help you do that. And the local person will have the network that they have established over the last 10 or 20 years, and you can have a quick start from there. Okay? And then tip number 3, you need to consider your business model. There's no high margin, high volume business in Asia at the beginning for you. If you have a business model that's high margin, high volume, please tell me. I would like to join your company. Okay. It's gonna be at the beginning. You have to think about what model you want to go with. If you're a startup, probably in Asia, you need to invest in some marketing, so it's going to be a low margin, low volume business at the beginning. You can use Singapore as a trial to test your products. And then if you want to scale up, if you're selling premium product and services, you want to be more focused and target certain segments of Asia, you can have a high margin and low volume model, grow your business, so that you can have the resources to invest in business. And then when you want to scale out, you probably need to reduce your margin in Asia, because now you have a successful model where you can scale. Other Asian competitors are going to come in and try to eat your lunch. So you need to think about having a lower margin model but higher volume as you start to scale out your business in Asia. So some quick tips for you guys, Carlos, and the people listening, for you guys to understand some of the challenges, the myths, and some of the tips to enter the Asia market. So how can we help here? Together Enterprise Singapore, we can think about helping businessmen from Tijuana do product research, market trials. They can go on learning journeys to Singapore, meet government, meet business leaders, meet associations, see commercial sites, see industrial sites, do some business networking, understand how to partner with, choose and understand how you partner with the correct people to do trade and distribution in Asia. And then there's training, coaching available. And if you really want to set up a rep office, I think I would encourage you to work with us to have your first foothold in Asia by setting up an office in Singapore. So these are some of the areas we can help you with. And before I came on to the call, your embassy, fellow countrymen in Singapore, the embassy of Mexico requested that we gave a message to the Tijuana businessmen who wants to come to Singapore. So during the last visit to Mexico in November, Prime Minister Lee and your president committed to pursue a strong economic and strategic trade partnership. The CPTPP, the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, as well as the negotiations that are taking place to ensure Singapore becomes an associate state member of the Pacific Alliance, will help to facilitate and enhance this effort. So one of the questions you asked is regarding COVID-19, and Singapore has strong containment and mitigation measures. Country is going through a circuit breaker, and we're going to reopen on the 1st of June. Our mortality rates are among the world's lowest, daily testing among the world's highest. Imported cases and community transmission are now at single digits. And the government has taken a strong and commendable strategy to mitigate spread in what we call migrant work dormitories. And the Singapore government is committed to improve the working and living conditions in the future for migrant workers who live in Singapore or commute on a daily basis from Malaysia. I know that Tijuana is a border city to the US, so I'm sure you have a lot of migrant workers who go in and out across the border to work and live across the two countries. The economic and societal fundamentals of Singapore remain strong, and Singapore will give Mexican companies a lot more opportunities after the health crisis subsides. And the Mexican embassy have strong confidence that Mexican companies can continue to leverage Singapore as a gateway to Asia. So with the strategy on trade ties, Singapore companies can also think about how to expand to the Americas region using Mexico as a hub to access business over there. So I wanted to share this message from your embassy. They gave us this message and wanted to assure and to support Tijuana businessmen. If they will come to set up in Singapore, they are going to welcome you here and offer a helping hand to get you set up and supported to your business in Asia. My contact here. The slides again, if you want to have a copy of my slides, you check here at asiaalfuturo.com. Feel free to download it. This slide that I'm giving you guys will also have information regarding statistics. If you are interested in, I can just, all these stats I can see. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see all the stats that you want to understand about Asia. Education system, literacy rates, the competitiveness of Singapore ranking. All this data will be as part of the slide under appendix. So if you are interested to find out more about data related to Asia, feel free to go to asiaalfuturo.com, download my slide. You can see the entire deck here.
Thank you so much, Alex. Actually, it's great seeing all this kind of information, and thank you so much for sharing this key information. And from your presentation, I got two different aspects that I would like to point. One, for doing business in Asia, first you need to localize, or you need to understand what is your market, where and who is your market. This is one of the first key aspects that you need to focus. And the second one will be understanding the culture and the market that is related to that culture, because is the way, or is the entry to the tropicalization of your product or your services within the local brands. So you mentioned actually an example of the bread. So if you need to just implement a new product within the Asia market, probably you will be expending more on the market research, on the publicity, and all the marketing tools in order to positionate your product. So probably you have to share, or you have to joint venture with a local brand, or at least understanding better the local branding. So that is actually a very good key aspect of your presentation. And obviously the three key aspects and the three key points that you mentioned for doing business in Asia. Thank you so much for the information. I believe the people that is looking at this presentation on Facebook will find this information very interesting. So thank you. And as you already mentioned, the information is there, so you can download it by yourself. And definitely we will post the link on our video, so you can have it whenever you have the time to have this information. Thank you so much, Alex, for sharing that information. We highly appreciate it. Samuel, what are your thoughts on this?
Alex, I commend you for that presentation. I can see why Benjamin invited you today, and thank you so much for that. And a lot of the things that you mentioned are definitely very important. I want to mention one very important is the rule of law, which Singapore is well known to be very, very strict, and I think it's what you're gonna correct me, but it's like over 50% of countries you can go in without a visa, something like that, because the people are very responsible. And one of my people I really admire from Asia is late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, and he did a fine job. You know, they call him the father of Singapore. I'm also an economic developer, so from that perspective, I commend they have done in such a short, relatively speaking, just such a short time to become the world's third financial center. There are many reasons why people should be interested in Singapore. And one, of course, is the rule of law, but another one very important is that logistically speaking, you're in the middle of Asia, so you can take a flight to pretty much everywhere in Asia in a short distance. Like you said, there's a diverse array of cultures, and not everybody is aware of that, and those subtle differences actually make all the differences when making business. And actually, the emblem of the merlion is representative of that mixture of cultures, representing the fishing villages that you used to have at the beginning, and also the word Singapore, which means island of lions from the Malay. So that's already a mixture there. And so I think that's something for us very important as economic developers, because that's what Tijuana EDC stands for, and also from our group of businessmen. It's very important for us to understand a little bit more. And thank you for your presentation. I'm sure a lot of our business people are going to be very interested. We're going to make sure that everybody gets your contact information. But at the same time, we would like to learn about that process that Singapore went through from the beginning. And I was going to choose as a background Mr. Lee Kuan Yew and one of his famous phrases. But I wouldn't dare to put somebody on my back that I admire so much. And he said something like, in a world that the big fish eats the smaller fish, and the smaller fish eats the shrimp, Singapore needs to become a poisonous shrimp. And that was very ingenious because, and I think it has to do a lot with technology. And you're going to probably expand a little bit more. And I don't know if it should be Benjamin or Alex, but whoever can expand a little bit more on that would be really very illustrative to us.
So thank you, Samuel, for sharing that comments.
Yeah, thank you, Samuel. So Singapore, as I mentioned, is a very young country. We gained independence in 1965. One of our key strengths at that time was that we are important trading post. So we are strategically located along the Straits of Malacca. And as you have correctly mentioned, if you look at the map right now, you will see that the ships transiting between India and China have to pass by Singapore. And we make use of that. Through that, we developed our financial industry. Because we started providing financial services, shipping insurance, maritime finance to the ship that were passing by. Also, the time zone that we are in, early in the days, there wasn't anybody covering the markets between the close of the American markets and open of the European markets. So we played a bridge for that. And then from there, we developed our financial sector. In the 60s, when we gained our independence, the economy was very focused on job creation. We had labor-intensive, sport-oriented industries such as sweatshops that produce garments and shoes, and light industrial plants that produce toys and cheap electronics. And then slowly we moved up the value chain, skill and capital-based economic development in the 70s. In the 80s, we started to diversify our economy in both manufacturing and services as twin pillars of growth. By the 90s, we shifted towards intellectual capital and knowledge as a source of value for wealth creation. And using that, we positioned Singapore as a keynote in a part of the global network connected to global economies. Most recently, Singapore, we have invested a lot in technology and innovation. In just fintech alone, we have more than 1,000 companies that have raised 1 billion Singapore dollars in 2019. So all of these are the mix of factors that have helped Singapore become leading financial hub, leading trading hub in the region. And as you have mentioned earlier, the rule of law, pro-business policies, and a stable regulatory environment, this has helped Singapore become one of the easiest places to do business in the world. So I welcome all of you to start doing business in Singapore.
Thank you so much, Benjamin, for that.
Samuel, you mentioned about rule of law. I heard rule of law, and I heard about many companies coming to Singapore. Actually, Singapore grew very, very quickly in the 1970s because Mr. Lee Kuan Yew invited the world's multinationals company from America and Europe to come to Singapore to set up our operations. So right now, 50 years has passed. Of course, the low-cost manufacturing has gone out to the region because of cost issues, but the high-tech, high-quality, and advanced manufacturing capabilities still reside in Singapore. But the most important aspect that I want to point out is this. We have more than 50 years of experience in working across the region because these multinationals companies have trained more than 3 generations of Singaporeans to deal with regional business. Right? They started in the 1970s, now it's like 2020, it's 50 years. Right? And they have taught the local population with skills transfer, through skills transfer, technology transfer from expats who have been living and working in Singapore over the last few years. And they've always used Singapore base to access the different regions of Asia. We also have something, when I speak to Mexicans and also my friends across the world, we have something that's really, really priceless that is always understated, and that is what I call security. Security of property, security of capital, and most importantly, fiscal security. So you come here and you feel that you can devote your energies to building your business and not worry about, should I buy an armored car? Should I have a guard? Well, do I need to look at my truck driver who's driving my goods from the port to the warehouse and then my truck might get lost? Or my goods might go missing in the warehouse. So we don't have to worry too much about those issues because the protection of fiscal protection of fiscal security, intellectual property, it's very important, and that actually security to me is the most priceless gift to any country if they want to do business. And we build an ecosystem that provides the safety and for business to grow here.
And you should be rightfully very proud of that. Definitely this security, even the feeling of security promotes growth. And I remember I saw the late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. There's a very famous speech that he's giving at the beginning of his political career when they're turning off the lights. I don't remember if you saw that, but there was a lot of corruption when he started. It was a terrible environment and people were trying to take him down. So it's admirable what one leader with the right vision and the people who were able to become part of that strategy were able to do. So that I will always treasure from my experiences with Singapore. And I'm glad that you mentioned that the ambassador sent his regards. We have some contacts as well, some good friends in Singapore that I'm very much aware that the diplomatic cuerpo diplomático, I'm sorry, I forgot the word in English, is a very, very high level and very sophisticated, and they have promoted a lot this relationship that, as you well mentioned, in the last couple of years, we've had 2 years ago, the November 2018, I think it was, the visit of your Prime Minister, where they established a new collaboration scheme, which is not new. We have been developing this for many, many years between Mexico and Singapore. So I think there's a lot of us that are aware, and we will definitely help you promote Singapore in the region. There are many opportunities, and there's also a lot to learn as Mexicans and as Baja Californians and as Tijuanenses. So thank you for that view.
Well, thank you so much for the Alex comments. Benjamin, also we highly appreciate your time and effort to set up this meeting. Samuel, obviously we thank you for making this possible. And to all our friends and followers in Facebook, we thank you for viewing this kind of information. So as you know, every day we have a different kind of aspects or information that we want to share with you. We hope that that information is helpful to you and furthers your business. So with that, I would like to say goodbye to our friends. Just final grand roundup for everyone. I don't know if Benjamin, Alex, do you want to share something just to as a final comment?
Yeah, so Singapore and Mexico, we are very far apart. It's hard to do business with the other end of the world or with the other side of the world. I think the most important thing is to find a good partner, and that is what I think Tijuana EDC and Enterprise Singapore, as well as ASEAN Futuro, we are here to do. So we hope to connect Mexican and Singapore businesses so that we can start something, either for this region or for Asia.
Thank you, Benjamin. Alex?
Hi. First of all, thank you for inviting me to the show. It's been an honor and privilege to be here to speak about my country and business in Asia. It has been a pleasure. I would like to end by saying that Asia is the world is actually the world's fastest growing engine. And after the health crisis is over, Asia will definitely bounce back like the past pandemics. And the growth will be absolutely phenomenal, right? All the countries have, injected a lot of stimulus into their economies. In next year, you will see a very huge rebound. So Asia, one of the world's biggest engines, and then Americas, and especially Latin America, a very young population, very optimistic people, hardworking people. There's something separating these two amazing regions, and that's called the Pacific Ocean. And we need two countries to, bridge those two continents. And I think that Mexico, as the trendy and big brother to me of the Spanish and Latin American world, and Singapore, located in the heart of Asia, if you can link these two countries together and build a bridge between the two nations, we will be able to do a lot of great things together.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's actually a great example. And by the way, you have an amazing country that we have a lot to learn to. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing the information. And for our friends in Facebook, well, the information is going to be there. So please just download it and we will post the links for you. So see you tomorrow and have a very nice afternoon. Thank you so much.